Unmuted, and we're here. Hey, welcome to my stream, whoever is here. I'm gonna turn this away because otherwise I'm gonna break everything. Nope, you see that? It's fine. Everything's fine. We're doing great. Just gonna fix my lights. Hi, welcome to my stream. Welcome back. If you were here last week, awesome. Thank you. If you weren't, that's fine. I was a full goblin yesterday and did not get home until 6 a.m. So I'm exhausted, but we're here because we said we would be here and we're going to do the thing. I don't know what that was about. I'm really excited to get into this. I've been thinking about it all week. If you didn't notice, I put an edited VOD on YouTube. So if you want to watch that, it cuts it down a little bit. It takes out some of the banter. I took out some of my awkward pauses because as I've never read this before, there's a lot of awkward pauses that I did not realize as I was reading it. But when I was rewatching the video and going through it just to see how it went, there was lots of them. And that's just how I talk. So I guess that's me, and I have to be okay with that. I think that putting it on YouTube reaches a different audience market, and also because it is a book and there are a lot of pauses because I'm reading it live with you guys, I mispronounce things or I read things too fast. And I'm sure that if I was listening to this book, like if I was interested in hearing it, I wouldn't necessarily want to deal with all of the pauses of a live stream, especially if I was reading along. I would much rather listen to it without those pauses. So that's why I'm editing it. And I'm going to try to keep putting those up. I wanted to get it up on Wednesday, and then Wednesday didn't happen. But that's because I got crazy and I vectored the Year of the Black Rainbow logo and made the cover image more complicated than I needed to. So that took a while, but I did it, and it's on YouTube, so you can go check it out. I don't know the link off the top of my head. Yeah. Anyway, I haven't been super advertising the stream because I don't know. It's something that I'm personally excited about, but I don't know if everybody else is excited about it. And it's a very specific style of stream. So if you're into audiobooks, if you're into Coheed and Cambria, if you like sci-fi weirdness, then this is the place for you. If you're not into those things, then leave. I also, when editing the recording, realized that I say way too often when I'm not reading, and for some reason my ums are way louder than anything else that I say. So I'm sorry. I'm going to work on that. We're going to try not to do that anymore. Have you ever considered recording for an audiobook? I have considered recording for an audiobook, but I don't know how somebody gets hired for those things. This is the story of my life. I feel like I could do a lot of jobs. I just don't know how to get those jobs. When I was reading last week, again, going back through the edit, there is some things that I wish I would have done that I didn't do. So we're going to try to remember all of the lines. And I meant to write myself cue cards. It was like, remember to say this, that, and the other thing. And I didn't write myself cue cards because I dressed up as a clown last night and ran around with a bunch of other clowns, and it was ridiculous. So instead, I slept all day and ate some food. Okay. Anyway, so last week on the stream / in the book, it was crazy. So last week we read the prologue in chapter 1, which is called Obscurity Has No Hero, and we were introduced to the keyframe network, which is the thing that binds all the planets together and kind of their god. And we also learned about the 3 types of beings. We've got the mages, the priests, and humans, and we were introduced to our main characters, which are Coheed and Cambria, and they're married, and they were on their first mission. We realized that Cambria is psychic and telekinetic-ish, but like I think that those are medical upgrades that she got from Dr. Hohenberger. I don't think she was born that way, and I think she's just human. I don't think those are like natural superpowers, if that makes sense. I think that they were prescribed to her. and she was trained with them. And we met Coheed, and we're not, I think he's human. He has one arm that is all blades, not all blades. He can extend and retract blades out of them. And the other arm is a gun arm that turns into a gun that like grows out of his arm and then reattaches to his shoulder. So that was epic. They went to the Howling Earth and they fought a bunch of ghosts and they destroyed a giant crystalline structure. And I don't think that the crystalline structure destroyed the Howling Earth, but it was using keyframe energy and trying to like harness that and make that go somewhere else. And nobody knows what they were trying to do with it. They just had it. And then they got back on the spaceship and met up with Inferno, who I gave a very nasally voice to, even though he is a he is a large, beefy man who runs the spaceship called the Grail Arbor. Yeah, I think that's the gist of chapter 1. Oh, and we talked about Ryan, and Ryan's a big deal, but I don't really understand. He's a bad guy? And Defton Wolf. See, if I was a real podcaster, I would have written out a synopsis and read it like a real person and not just babbled at you about what happened in chapter 1. Basically, Cohen and Cambria have been trained to figure stuff out, and they've got a spaceship, and they're trying to save the keywork. Yeah. So there we are. Any questions? I had to restrain myself from reading it in the week so that I could read it with you guys and have genuine reactions to it, because even though it means that I read it worse, it's more fun, I think. Oh. So, without further ado, Year of the Black Rainbow by Claudio Sanchez with Peter David, Chapter 2, Cleanse This Useless Identity. In, and somewhere slightly later than the beginning, the sky above Cynosure was bleeding. Sorry, we're somewhere completely different now. The sky above Cynosure was bleeding. Mage Covent Marth studied it carefully and decided upon reflection that it required more red. The canvas was spread out before him, consuming much of the wall of his sanctum. He knew that other mages had little patience for something as primitive as painting, far preferring to express their artistic side using holography or other light science. Marth, on the other hand, was enamored of the antiquated materials required for classic painting. He blended the red paint meticulously with his brush until he was satisfied with the precise shade, then carefully drew it across the sky. He had crafted the rift a day earlier, but had not decided what was going to be emerging from it until several minutes earlier. Now, he was carefully delineating every streak, every drop of the thick liquid as it oozed from on high on the planet's surface. People were fleeing in all directions. A priest had been drifting upward to inspect the rift, and a gargantuan drop of blood had enveloped her and was in the process of burning away her flesh. In his head, he could hear her screaming. He hadn't known she was going to wind up dying in his painting until he had reached that point. As soon as he was finished with the blood, he was going to have to go back and repaint her to depict her skin crisping and blackening and turning into ash, revealing her tissue and bones beneath. He wondered absently if he was going to have to determine exactly how her wings joined the rest of her musculature, just so he could be accurate. Finally, he decided that he would just incinerate her wings altogether to avoid the fuss. I forgot how gory this book is. Human men and women were running back and forth as well, their arms flailing, looking up and pointing and shrieking. Not that their shrieks could be heard in the painting, since it was entirely a silent medium. I'm having trouble with his name. I want to call him Covert, but it's Covent. But Covent Marth's desire was that the rendering be so realistic that simply looking at it would call up howls of agony in the mind of the viewer. They were mages as well. How could there not be mages? They were depicted standing in a circle, their arms upraised in a combination of fear, supplication, and awe. Spatters of blood were striking around them, but none of them were being hit. 11 mages stood in that circle. One more was in the middle. There was a chime from the door of his sanctum. It was a Spartan affair, needing nothing much except various books, charts, and other tools that were part of this perpetual contemplation of the universe. "Come," he called, his voice gravelly. The door hissed open and a dark figure stood within it. "Ah," said Marth. Ryan, do come in." Wilhelm Ryan stood there for a moment, glancing left and right as if he was expecting some manner of trap that would ensnare him the moment he entered. Then he inclined a head slightly in acknowledgement of the invitation and entered. Marth made a sweeping gesture towards the nearby seat. Ryan made no move toward it. "What think you of cynosure?" said Marth as he continued to dabble on his easel. He took care to make every stroke of the brush just so. "It is all that I have heard it to be and more. Besides," Marth cast a glance at him, "your new face sits well upon you. You will become accustomed to it in short order, I imagine." "I'm accustomed to it now." Wilhelm Ryan had looked different from when he first arrived on Cynosure, the world that was the dead center of the heaven's fence. The process that a potential mage underwent, however, when being elevated to such status, burned away everything that one was, remaking one into the sacred image that one would be. It was a perfect example of old tradition that existed simply because it had always been so. The more contemporary mages, though, happy to undergo the procedure, which had unified their facial features, were free to regain subtle differences in the manner of their dress and hair. Marth, an elder, expressed his own preoccupation with the fine art by decorating the exposed veins spidering across his face with ebony paint. "The 12, Marth mused quietly. "We are 12 once again, for you have replaced Sundahar, These names. "The 12. Marth quietly mused. "We are 12 once again, for you have replaced Sundahar Jep, the mage of Sector 6. He lived to a grand age, one to which most can only aspire, and now you are here in his place." "Despite your best efforts." Ryan had spoken so softly that Marth could easily have chosen to ignore the comment, to pretend that he did not hear it. He chose not to do so. Instead, continuing not to look at Ryan, but rather focus on his painting, he said, "So we are to get down to it, are we?" "You asked to see me," covenant Marth. "Just as I would not dream of wasting your time, I would ask you to extend the same courtesy of not wasting mine." Of course, said Marth, his voice flat and passionless. "I asked to see you." "To explain yourself?" Very slowly, Marth had placed the brush down upon the palette. "You have a remarkable nerve for one so recently added to our numbers." "I have not had as long as a period to become as pompous as you, so I am hastening to make up for the time." Marth's smile remained carefully fixed. Then he inclined his head slightly. "The other mages are most accepting of you, Ryan. They believe that becoming the head of Sector 6 will provide you an opportunity to prove your abilities to us. As head of Sector 4, I represent only one vote. So even if I was against you—" "Do not fence with me," said Ryan. "We both know one mage was opposed to my joining, and we both know it was you." "Such deliberations, decisions, and votes are kept in the strictest of confidence." "I understand." Ryan waited only a moment. "But it was you." "Yes, it was." "I would like to know why." "Very well," said Marth softly. "I suppose you're entitled to that, at least. Come, walk with me, if you will." Ryan looked suspicious, but then he simply nodded and followed Marth out of the room. They stepped out into the hub, the vast courtyard that represented the heart of Cynosure. A series of 12 walkways, each a different color, converged at a central point in the courtyard. At that juncture was a huge 12-pointed red star, 20 feet from tip to tip, with each point representing one of the sectors that each of the mages oversaw. Each of the walkways, in turn, led to an individual tower that housed the sanctum of each of the mages. None were able to enter save by special invitation from those who resided within. Not long ago, Ryan had been standing in the middle of that star, being welcomed into the Brotherhood of the Mages. "Possibilities," said Marth as they walked to the center of the star. "Pardon?" "I said possibilities." I heard you," said Ryan, "but I don't pretend that I understood you." Marth was looking not at Ryan, but toward the heavens. "Tell me what you see when you look to the skies, Ryan." "I do not have time for games." "Perhaps not, but—" There was an undercurrent of irony in his voice. "You will have time for me. What do you see?" Ryan shrugged indifferently. "The stars. What else is there to see?" "Do you see the spirit of the Creator looking down upon us?" "I would not know what that looks like, even were it there. Why? What do you see?" "Possibilities." "For one who resists change as much as you seem rather obsessed with that notion," said Ryan. We all have our gifts, Ryan, a specialty that each of us alone wields. I, for instance. He gestured, and the air around Ryan began to sizzle. An instant later, a ring of fire leaped into existence around him. The flames crackled furiously, the tops of them flickering toward him tauntingly, threateningly. Ryan observed them with detachment, as if he felt that whatever he was witnessing was surely someone else's problem and not his. If Marth was waiting for some sign of alarm from Ryan, he was to be disappointed. Marth's face, however, was inscrutable, giving not the slightest indication of what he was expecting other than to see a demonstration of his own prowess in conjuring the flame from the air. His brow furrowed slightly and the flame evaporated. Ryan idly brushed some soot off his sleeves, but otherwise did not seem the least incommoded by the demonstration. But, continued Marth, that is not the limit of my abilities. I have another blessing, as it were. I see possibilities, Ryan. He said, not wanting for Ryan to prompt him with another question. I see aspects of the future that are closed to others. Do you? Ryan remained unimpressed. And I take it that I somehow feature prominently in that future which you and only you perceive? That you do. First, I discern your Red Army. I have heard rumors of them, said Ryan dismissively. As have I. Rumors that they are a force more tenacious than my previous mage army, that they are expanding and gathering weaponry enough to destroy all the sectors. The other mages are disinclined to believe in rumors, especially when the purported army has covered its tracks as deftly as yours. But you and I know differently, do we? Furthermore, I discern blackness when I look upon you, Ryan. I perceive a road towards darkness and damnation, with you as the one setting us on that course. You noticed my painting, I presume. If you call that pathetic rendering that was hardly worth a child's effort a painting, yeah, I did. Harbinger of doom and art critic, your evil knows no bounds. Speak your piece, Ryan said with a noticeable impatience. You may have noticed that the sky was bleeding. That was not meant to be literal. Instead, it is a representative of what is impending forth for the mages, and for the entirety of Heaven's Fence. There will be blood, and all will share in its spilling. And there will be one who is going to be responsible for the tearing a gaping wound, not only in the minds and bodies of all living creatures, but possibly the fabric of reality itself. All that we know will be threatened. Much of what we know will die. And that one who will commit these crimes against God and man will be me? I believe that to be the case, yes. Then why do you not warn the mages against me? Because, said Marth, with the air of one who bears more of a burden than any should rightly have to deal with. My gift is also accompanied by a curse, as the greatest gifts typically are. Ryan's eyes narrowed a moment, and then a slow smile spread across his face. It was the single most unpleasant thing that Marth had ever witnessed. They do not believe you. The mages do not believe you. No, they never do. Even when subsequent events support the predicted outcome, they typically ascribe it to happenstance. My fate is no doubt punishment from on high for some transgression I committed at some point in my long existence. How comforting to be able to blame an unseen entity for whatever aspects of life that do not suit you. Actually, it's not in the least bit comforting. Then, and Ryan spread his hands wide, if you truly believe your vision of what is to come, you have no choice but to try and stop me before anything happens. The safety of the galaxy is resting on your shoulders. So, what are you going to do about it? Do you suggest that I punish you for sins before you have committed them? If there is no other choice, I don't see how it can be avoided. There is always a choice, Ryan. I choose to leave it in your hands. It is, after all, your fate that is to be determined. However, and he raised a single finger, one should always be aware of the potential consequences of one's actions. Meaning? Oh. The explosion of a pulsar blast drowned out Ryan's single-word question. It struck the ground immediately to Ryan's left, leaving a scorch mark on the surface of the symbolic star. Ryan stared down at it, no longer any hint of derision upon his face. At this moment, said Marth coolly, you are targeted by one of my men. Valere Crom, I assume? Possibly. He is currently staked out at a high point, perhaps in a tower, perhaps in one of the surrounding mountains. He has you targeted. He could blow you out the back of your skull with a single squeeze of his trigger finger. Are you informing me that he's going to be watching me in perpetuity? Obviously not. I am saying, however, that you would be well advised to have a care in your actions over the next century or so. Sound advice. So sound, in fact. There was another pulsar blast, then slightly higher pitched, indicating that a different weapon was the source. It struck the Star de Mars' immediate right, and this one actually created a small hole in the paving. A wisp of smoke arose from it, drifting lazily skyward. That I would extend it to you as well, finished Ryan. Marth stared down at the small hole. Defton I assume. That would seem a reasonable guess. The two majors stared at each other over what seemed a chasm. This will not end well, said Marth. If that's your foresight speaking, perhaps it will comfort you to know that I believe you. It's not, and it does not. Ryan bowed slightly. It'd be an honor to serve with you, my new brother. Then he turned abruptly on his heel and walked away. Marth looked heavenward and imagined that he could actually see the beginnings of blood dripping from the sky. No, he said softly, not well at all. Never had he felt more alone. That's the end of the chapter. Ooh. So in real life, the stream continued, and then I proceeded to read chapters 3 and 4. But in YouTube life, we're not going to do that. So we're going to end it with chapter 2 here. Thank you so much for coming. If you're interested in checking out the live stream as it actually happens in real time to see that I don't know how to read and that I do a lot of editing to make it sound this okay, you can always check it out. We stream on Sundays at 8:30 p.m. on Twitch, Eastern Standard Time. The Twitch link is http://twitch.tv/bizarre_Bryn. I'll put that link somewhere in the description, which you have to copy and paste because it's not clickable because YouTube doesn't believe in me. Thank you so much. Hopefully we'll see you there. If not, go check out chapter 3 whenever that is loaded. Bye!